I always start my October month by watching the classic horror film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, and it got me wondering, is there any games based on the films, or that iconic character Leatherface? Oh boy, was I surprised. So strap in because this is going to be a long one. Here's a look at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre games, or games that at least feature Leatherface. I hope you enjoy. Now I should make this clear from the start, I'm mainly looking at games based in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre universe. There will however be a bit at the end where I'll cover games Leatherface made a cameo appearance in. All the games I cover aren't necessarily licensed games. Some are developed independently but are definitely worth going over. From what I could find online, there are 4 games based in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre universe, and 4 in which Leatherface makes a cameo appearance in, so 8 games in total. I mean, there's probably loads more, but the majority were knockoff titles which barely resembled anything related to the franchise, so I didn't see the point in including them. I must also mention, with there being so many games I have to cover spanning across 5 different consoles, I wasn't able to fully play them all, but you'll find out why when I cover them. I managed to physically play 4 out of the 8, but don't worry, for the ones I couldn't play, I'll still provide footage and explain the general gist of what's going on. Now all that's out the way, let's get into some games. First up is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, released on the Atari 2600. It was developed by VSS Inc. and published by Wizard Video Games and released in 1983, 9 years after the release of the film itself. With it being an Atari 2600 game, there isn't much to talk about here. You take control of Leatherface as you attempt to murder these trespassers while trying to rack up a high score. For each kill you get 1,000 points. For every 5 kills you get, you will receive extra fuel for your chainsaw, represented at the top of the screen. Once you have run out of fuel, it's game over. If only Sally knew all you had to do was boot Leatherface up the arse, she would have had a much easier time in the film. Hunting down these trespassers is easy enough most of the time, but some teleport in front of you and then behind you while you're revving up your chainsaw to get the kill. It can get pretty annoying at times, especially because revving up the chainsaw uses a lot of fuel. There are obstacles you must avoid while chasing down these trespassers that include hay, fences, skulls, and wheelchairs. Yeah, I get that Sally's brother in the film Franklin had a wheelchair, but it seems so random to have these scattered all over the place as an obstacle. You have Leatherface in the game as the main character to have it all tie in together. Wheelchairs aren't the first thing that comes to mind when I think of the film, although that scene where Franklin rolls down the hill does make me laugh. Anyway, back to the obstacles. You can get stuck if you come into contact with any of these, and will remain in a stunned state for a brief period of time. You can use the chainsaw to speed this up, but I didn't find it too necessary. There isn't much to talk about when it comes to sound. You hear the chainsaw humming while it's not in use. A weird sound when you get a kill. But one thing that really done my head in was the sound I can only describe as the trespassers screaming. Just listen to it. It really pissed me off quickly. As far as I could find online, this was one of the first games based on a horror film to get released, and it didn't go down too well. It caused controversy because of the violent nature, which by today's standards is really tame. I can't imagine I'd have been shocked myself back then when there was more violence in the film than the actual game itself. Anyway, it's definitely not one I'll be revisiting anytime soon. Cool for if you're a fan of the original movie like myself, but nothing more than that. Now it would be a long time until we'd see another Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. In fact, nearly 23 years later, coming out in 2006. This time it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not for the PS3 or Xbox 360. Not even PC, but mobile? I don't know why this decision was made, but I do remember Java games being very popular, and almost every film I can remember coming out back then had games coming out for it on mobile. This time it's a side-scroller with the aim of the game being to get from one side of the level to the other. Graphically it looks impressive for a mobile game of its time. It sort of reminded me of the Metal Slug games with its appearance. There are 3 different environments you play through, these being Texas, home, and then the slaughterhouse. Each environment has 3 levels to get through, making it a pretty short game. You play as Leatherface again, and of course your weapon is a chainsaw. Each environment has its own enemies, with the earlier levels being fairly easy to deal with, but as you progress they start to introduce enemies that throw projectiles and even enemies that fire guns at you. Your life meter is displayed in the top left corner. You can find med packs scattered throughout each level, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about dying in this game because they are pretty generous with how many you can find. You can also find power-ups after killing an enemy. These include turning your chainsaw into a fire chainsaw, which I thought was pretty cool. Another can shoot chainsaws all over the place, sort of like a boomerang. There was another one I seen a few times while playing, but I wasn't quite sure on how I done it. There is a score count for each kill you get. Don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it caused an explosion type effect and all these chainsaws would fly out killing all enemies on screen. The killing animations were pretty cool, I thought. A lot of blood, which I always like to see in a game like this. One thing that was really annoying though was the sound effects of the enemies screaming in the first environment you find yourself in. Anytime one of these guys come on screen, you hear this annoying sound. Really done my tits in like the screaming noises in the Atari game. All in, I actually enjoyed this game. There was only ever once or twice the game crashed on me, but I don't know if that was down to emulating it or not. If I had one thing to criticise though, it would be the speed of the game. When you jump from platform to platform, it felt as if Leatherface was hovering and it got pretty annoying at times. Luckily, with it being emulated, I had the choice to change the speed of the game, which helped massively. Check out the difference for yourself. I definitely recommend giving this a go if you have a spare 20 minutes or so to kill. Now on to Shadow of Leatherface, the first independent game on the list, and it's definitely worth covering. It's PC only, which I've realised now that's been 3 games in a row I've covered in this video on systems I've never touched on this channel before. It's developed by a guy called Stefano Cagnini, who's an Unreal Engine 4 developer who makes these games and posts them for free. Shadow of Leatherface literally picks up from where the original film ends. Even playing the chase scene from the end of the film, absolutely iconic and great to see in game form. Even with an added bit with Leatherface walking back to the house while the intro credits roll to take out some police that have shown up at the house. From here you're told the game is based 10 years after the film and you take control of a group of youngsters that have been out partying and are now stuck because their car is broken down. You explore this abandoned neighbourhood looking for someone to help you, and then you come across a meat factory. From here, one of the girls you're with says she needs the toilet, so now you take control of her and make your way inside the factory. You find the toilet and get a bit of a jump scare. Not going to lie, obviously it was coming eventually, but I wasn't expecting it so soon. Next you take control of the other girl to go investigate, and she meets the same fate as her friend. The male of the group hears the screams from inside and decides to take a look for himself. He finds his 2 female friends dead with a chainsaw lying beside them. He picks it up and meets Leatherface in a standoff. You have to hit him while he runs towards you, taking him to the ground. You then get a flashback to when Leatherface is a kid and he's being picked on by these other kids. From here you explore the surrounding area until you find a bunny mask and a knife and kill the kids who was mocking him. I guess explaining how Leatherface became a serial killer, it really caught me off guard this bit, and it felt really weird playing as a kid slicing up the other kids who were laughing at him. It cut straight back into the standoff you had before the flashback, and now you're chasing down the male until you cut him up with a chainsaw. It's a really short game, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. Really makes me wonder what they could do with this franchise in game form. I loved the PS1 style graphics and the controls were really easy to grasp. However, I do wish this had controller support though. As easy as it was to use the keyboard, I much prefer having a gamepad in hand while playing. Honestly though, Stefano has a whole bunch of games from films you can download and play for free. Check out his site, and if you see any you like, download them quick because a lot come and go fast due to copyright claims. Which is bullshit if you ask me. This guy makes the type of games the fans of these franchises want to see and play. If anything, they should be thanking him. Next up is Leatherface Shadow of Massacre. This is another game by Stefano, and I was sadly not able to play this game due to it having a copyright claim and it being removed. I tried my hardest to find a link to download it, but they were all dead. It looks absolutely fantastic though. The same sort of playing style as the previous game with how you take control of different characters. As it states in the opening title screen, it's based on the original film. It's got a lot more atmosphere compared to the last game, with a few cutscenes added in too. A father in his daughter's car breaks down and the father explores a nearby slaughterhouse while the daughter waits outside. The attention to detail in the slaughterhouse looks fantastic, with blood on the floor and animal carcasses swaying on the hooks. After exploring a bit, he comes across Leatherface wielding a meat cleaver. Now the player takes control of Leatherface and you're tasked to kill the man before he escapes. I can't get over how terrifying Leatherface looks and acts in this game. Stefano got him spot on. Now Leatherface leaves the slaughterhouse and finds the daughter. Now you have to chase her down through the woods. It switches to the daughter now as she runs. Something really unsettling about hearing a chainsaw in the background while running. At this point it turns into a running simulator because it goes on for quite a bit. After the chase you are tasked to escape the area you're in. Leatherface eventually finds you and it's back to the running simulator again, this time as you play as Leatherface, and you have to take her down once and for all. After this the end credits roll while you watch Leatherface making his way back to his home to sit on his porch. It looks fantastic and I'm extremely gutted I cannot play it. I feel the chasing scenes would be a lot more intense if I was actually playing it myself. Like I said before, check out Stefano's site, there's some great titles on there. Now it's time for cameos, games in which Leatherface has appeared in but aren't completely about him. I won't be going into too much detail about these games because they pretty much speak for themselves. First up is a game called Terrordrome, Rise of the Boogeymen. It's a fan-made fighting game by Hurricane Studios and released for the PC. It features 14 playable iconic horror movie characters, most notably Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, also some cult classic favourites like Candyman and Pumpkinhead, but seeing as this is a video about Leatherface, we'll be playing as him. From the main menu you can choose from story mode, versus mode and training. I just jumped straight into the story mode. From here you fight your way through the game's roster of iconic horror movie characters until you reach the end. It plays like any other fighting game to be honest, and the controls are pretty tight too, which is important for a game of its kind. You have your usual punch and kick, a strong and weak weapon attack. You also have the ability to jump and run forward and backward. You can also taunt. I got a good laugh from Leatherface's taunt. Lad. You can pause the game, which brings up the move list for your character. It was meant to be played with a keyboard, but it does have support for a PlayStation and Xbox controller thankfully. You can pull off some good moves and combos if you take the time to learn them. The character models look great and are very accurate, which I can appreciate. The different levels you play through represent the location in which your opponent is from. Mostly iconic scenes from the films they represent, like fighting Jason in Camp Crystal Lake or Ghostface in a high school's hallway. The music theme for each opponent you face corresponds to the film they came from too, which I thought was a nice touch considering it's the music that makes up a large portion of these films, adding that extra layer of fear. All in, it's pretty decent. I'm not the biggest fan of fighting games. If it's not Super Street Fighter or Tekken Tag for the PlayStation 2, I'm never really that interested in this genre of game. But if horror films and fighting games are your thing, then it's the perfect match for you. Now on to the next one, Texas Maniac for Android. I really was in two minds whether to add this in or not. I randomly stumbled across it online and thought it looked somewhat interesting and does include Leatherface, I guess. I tried getting this going on an Android emulator but it only got this far. It wouldn't let me start the game so I had to look at videos online. You play as an unnamed character which I assume is lost. The story isn't too deep in the intro and from here you stumble across a house which looks a lot like the house from the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. From here you gather clues and solve puzzles. This is what really got me interested in it. I'm not sure if the guy who was recording this was clueless or if the game really is that cryptic, but the thing that got me interested in this game slowly became the thing I realised why I don't think I'd have been too much of a fan of it. It appears to have a lot of backtracking and next to no ambience, so you're left hearing the sound effects of your own footsteps constantly. Shame, because a game like this could have so much potential if done right. I feel if Stefano took elements from this game and put it into a longer version of his Shadow of the Leatherface game, that'd be pretty cool. I know it's not licensed, but if something similar came out on console rather than a phone, I reckon it could be pretty good. Next up is Leatherface's cameo appearance in a game called Dead by Daylight, which I haven't played, nor do I ever plan on doing so. Dead by Daylight is an online survival horror game where it's one killer going after 4 survivors. Like I said, I haven't played it myself so don't know too much about it, but what I do know is they released loads of DLC packs containing iconic horror movie characters to play as. Some of these include Ash, Freddy Krueger, Hellraiser, Ghostface, but we're here to look at Leatherface, and from what I can see, he looks pretty good in this. Not much else to say really. Now on to the last one in today's video, and that is Mortal Kombat X. I'm sure Mortal Kombat needs no introduction. I may think it's gotten a bit stale over the years, but it still has a massive following. Much like Dead by Daylight, Mortal Kombat also brought out DLC containing iconic horror movie characters, and they all look brilliant. in particular Leatherface. He has both his butcher attire and suited attire with each mask he donned for each costume in the film, which I thought was really cool, and he looks great. His fatalities are absolutely brutal too, using both his butcher hook and chainsaw to brutally end his opponent. If anything, Leatherface would maybe be the reason for me to give Mortal Kombat X or even Dead by Daylight a shot, but I'm not paying for a game to then buy in-game DLC like this. I'm past all that now. I'm not a mug, you either give me the complete game or I don't purchase it at all. Easy as that. Anyway, that's the end of this video. If you've played any of these games or are interested in any of them, let me know down in the comments below. I actually enjoyed playing through the ones I could. Managed to tick a few games off I've wanted to play in the one video, so that's an added bonus. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing for future content I'll upload. And yeah, hopefully catch you in the next one. See ya!